In this video, we are going to practice making backups and then restoring backups. And we're going to use just some basic utilities to do that available in MariaDB or MySQL. Excuse me. So for our first task, what I'm going to recommend that we do is first take a snapshot of your existing MariaDB server. So my last one was info 366-3. So I used the Google Cloud to make a snapshot of that VM, and then I spun up just a new version, um, a new instance of that snapshot. And I've shown how to do that in previous videos, so you could do that first. And then once that snapshot is up and running, this latest version of that snapshot, the other thing we're going to need to do is create another server, because what we're going to do is we're going to back up our database on one server and we're going to restore it to a second server. So we have the exact same database running on two different servers, which we're going to try to use later to demonstrate replication. So our first step to create this new database or this new server, I think I've shown you how to do this before, obviously. So you're just going to go into Google and you're going to create a new instance, and it's just going to be a basic instance of MariaDB. So I'm going to call this one, oops, all lowercase. I'm going to call mine info 366-5 because it's my fifth machine, right? So I've got, I've already got a 1, 2, and 3 now, and then a 4, and now a 5, right? But you can call them whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. And just like before, I'm going to make sure I use the smallest possible machine because I don't really need a whole lot of memory for this thing. And oops, sorry, I meant to do F1 micro is probably good enough. That's really probably all we need, right? So we're just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to create that instance. So it's going to take a minute to create, and then in order for us to get started here, we're also going to need to install MariaDB on this instance. So while this is running, I'll just explain we need to do another instance of MariaDB on here. And of course, we have to set it up so that we can access it and do all the other things that we did with our VM. So my first step is I'm going to connect to that machine. I'm just going to do it in a browser window. This always takes a second to connect. All right, I am connected. Of course, I'm using my Google account. So just as we've done before, I'm going to set my root password so I can access my root account. All right, so I now have my access set up. I'm going to use the su command. We're going to add another user. I'm just going to make it be green. All right, so now my user account set up, and I have to enable SSH, right? So I have to make it so I can log in with SSH just so we'll be able to access the machine without having to use Google's console to do that, right? So to do that, to access with SSH, we are going to use the vi command. And actually, I can't remember what the file is, so let's, it's going to be under SSHD, I think. There we go. So and there's the SSHD config, so we're going to use vi to edit that. All right, and if you remember what we have to set in here, so, and we've done this a number of times, right? So we're going to now allow password authentication. And challenge response is going to be set to yes. That way we can log in from the console. All right, I think that's all we need. Now I have to restart SSH. Wow, that started very quickly. So let me open up another instance of the command shell, or the PowerShell rather, and we're going to SSH to it. So I'm going to use that bgreen account, and I have to go find the IP address, which is probably this one right here, right? Because that's my latest one, -5. Oh, I spelled my name wrong. Let me reconnect, but I'm wondering why I can't log in. Okay, I'm in, and I should be able to switch to root. All right, so I'm running as root now. So if you recall, the next thing we have to do is install MariaDB. Oh, whoops. This is, I forgot we're running Debian on these things. So it's apt-get install, sorry. Apt-get install. But if you were using Red Hat, you would use yum. All right, so we've done this before, right? We've installed the server before. This is all pretty straightforward. And as you can see, it's installing MariaDB version 10.1, 38, build 38, which is good. It's the same version that we've been installing. Obviously, if you're watching this video later, it might be a different build number or a different version number. As long as it's at least 10.1, we should be good with these assignments. Okay, it looks like it's installed. So now I should be able to access MySQL with the MySQL command, and I'm in. Obviously, I don't have any databases yet, right? So if I do show databases, all I have are the built-in databases. So I'm going to have to build the server, right? So this is going to be a second server. And the way we're going to do this, so what we're going to try to do in this first lab is back up our database on the other server that we already have. So let me switch over to the other screen. So I'm going to log into MySQL. We'll show databases. So here you can see I have the college scorecard database. So I'm gonna back up the college scorecard database, and then I'm going to restore it to the other server. There are lots of different ways to back up and restore. In your textbook, they talk about things like using the files, right? So you could do that. So for example, under USR bin, there should be a MySQL, right? Maybe it's MariaDB. Sorry, I forgot it's in var lib, uh, not in user lib. So once I go in there, I can see college scorecard, right? So there's going to be a whole bunch of files in there. Let me get my mouse back over here. Um, Yep, so there's all my data files. So in theory, I could create my database and then copy all these files over, right? And in order to do that, I'd have to either stop MariaDB and then copy the files, or I could put the database in a mode where it basically cleans up the files and it's in a read-only mode, so I can move them and then bring it back up into a read-write mode. Using the dump utility, though, we could do it without affecting the database at all, so we're going to use that. It's probably best practice to use the dump utility. The only issue with the dump utility is if you have a really large database, sometimes it can be a little bit unwieldy to use that dump utility, and it makes a little more sense in some cases to just copy the files over. So we're going to try the dump utility. Obviously, copying files is pretty easy, but using the dump utility is just a little bit different. So let's give that a shot. So the easy part is running the command, which is simply, it's MySQL dump. And if we put dash dash help, I think it'll actually give us some options here. Yep, so there's lots of options for the MySQL dump utility, and you can certainly read through these and take a look at them if you'd like. Um, lots of stuff in here, but we want to basically just back up our the one database, right? So the database that we're working with, which is College Scorecard. So to do that, I'm going to run MySQL dump, and then the database name, which is going to be College Scorecard. In theory, you can list the table names if you like, right? So if you only want to back up certain tables, you could do that. Like if I only wanted to do a dump of the table with school, right? I could just type school, and it will copy school, and I'll put it in a file called school.backup, right? And it ran. And if I look at my files, I can use VI and take a look at school.backup. And there it is. It's basically, if you look at it, it's really just a SQL script, right? All it does when it does the dump, it basically it drops the table first, and then it tries to create the table, and then it tries to insert all the data for that table. And you can see that here. So, oops, I went a little too far there. Yep, so there's all the data. So it tries to dump all the data. It's all in one block, right? So that's why it doesn't look like a lot of lines, but this is all the data from that particular table. So we could do this for the entire database, right? So if we just want to back up the entire database, if I get rid of school, and I probably should change the name on this. So we're just going to call it College Scorecard .sql, right? That's going to be our backup file. And let's take a look, right? So it should be a relatively not huge file, right? Because our database isn't that big, but it's big enough, right? In fact, let's run the school one again, just so I can show you, so we can see the difference. Yeah, so you can see here that school.sql is, much smaller than the college scorecard .sql. And you can see I actually already had a backup in there. I must have done another backup probably for a student, right? Looks like August 2nd, one of you probably smoked your database and asked me to send you a copy of it perhaps, or actually I think all of you restored this from a database before, right? So we've done this before. So let's go ahead and restore this to our other machine. To do that, the easiest way to get this file over to our new database server is going to be use the SCP command. And I don't know if Google lets you use DNS internally. Let's see if it works. Oh yeah, it works. Great. So we can just use the names of our machines and not have to remember IP addresses. That makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to use so whatever your host name is, you can use that instead of having to put the IP address into these commands. And assuming I typed all that right, it should take the file college scorecard. I'm already in this directory, so it should just copy it over to home B green, and I put my slashes in here backwards. So let me fix that real quick. That's what happens when we go back and forth between Windows and Linux, right? Just have to type yes to accept the SSL cert. And it looks like it's done already, so I should be able to jump onto the other machine. And there it is. There's my file. So I should have the MySQL dump utility. However, we don't have a database created yet. So before we run the command, we're probably going to want to create our database, right? So we're going to create a database called oops, sorry, I can't type today. All right, database is created. Now that I have my database, I can use the MySQL command to import the contents of that dump file that we created. So we're just going to run the MySQL command. I don't have to use a user because I'm connected as root, right? Database is going to be college scorecard. All right, let's see if that works. Oh, I didn't have to put my password. Sorry, I don't know why I put dash P. I didn't really need that. I could have left the dash P out and it would have just worked, right, without me having to put my password in. All right, so now that we've done that, I should be able to see the contents of that database now, right? So if I just go into MySQL, we're going to use college scorecard. Show tables, there they are. Just select a bunch of stuff from school. Maybe not a bunch, maybe just one, right? So we have our data, right? So we backed up from one server, restored it to the other. We could have done it with the files if we wanted to. There's a variety of other methods, physical backups and things like that. But we just wanted to use the SQL dump utility because it's the most straightforward. But the next thing we're going to do is look at how we might be able to use something like this to do clustering or for replication. So we're going to talk about replication first. All right, so that's backup. So make sure you have your backup restored, make sure that the database works, and then we're going to move on to the next step.